Hello and welcome back. I'm Dan, the Neuro Man May, and this is where we change the system. Nice to have you with me again, folks. This is the final episode of season one. Okay, so we're going to bring it all together today. So, welcome once again to the Neurodivergence podcast, where we discuss the systems that we try to fit into and neurodiversity in general. So, we've talked about masking, we've talked about burnout, we've talked about labels, and much, much more. All of it leads to one idea that difference was never the problem, that understanding was. When people understand difference, they work with it, not against it. You don't need to become someone else. We, as neurodivergent people, need environments that support us. Now, I don't mean to get political, but there is an article I've come across recently which has upset me quite deeply, and I'm sure that it's upset a lot of neurodivergent people. Um, the idea that Tony Blair, our former Prime Minister, wants to stop people with ADHD and anxiety from claiming benefits. First of all, what gives him the right to say that? Surely he has no power over that. And the last time I checked, our Labour government were looking to continue to support people with disabilities, both physical and neurodivergent, but to change the way in which disabled people are assessed. And it does upset me because, I've been a Labour supporter all my life. And, that's how I've been brought up. My family have always been Labour supporters, and we've always believed in what they stand for the working man and woman. And there's something deeply frustrating about Tony Blair weighing in on who should and shouldn't have access to benefits. Because people like myself and other neurodivergent people are not theoretical, we're not statistics, we're not policy talking points. This is what annoys me with the world today, because this is something that neurodivergent people live with every single day. For example, I have ADHD, I have autism, and I have anxiety. They all shape my life in ways that don't fit neatly into policy categories. Now, this isn't about being distracted or stressed. It's about sitting down to complete a simple task and feeling completely unable to start. Overthinking basic interactions until they become overwhelming. Having days where everything clicks and others where nothing works at all. And trying to function in environments that demand consistency when your brain simply isn't consistent. Now, I've worked in education. I've trained. I've stepped into roles where expectations are high and structure is very rigid. And sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't work. And that's not because I don't care, but because my brain reaches a limit that effort alone does not solve. And there seems to be this ongoing myth around consistency, because one of the biggest misunderstandings about ADHD is if you can do it once, you can do it all the time. I'm sorry, but that's not true. I've had moments where I've succeeded supporting students, handled responsibility, shown real capability, but I've also had moments where things have fallen apart quickly in the wrong environment. And it was me falling apart in the wrong environment last year that inspired me to pursue my advocacy, to write my book, Neuro Man, my ADHD journey, to help raise awareness for ADHD UK with my ambassadorship, and to also do this podcast, not only for my own self esteem, but for the self esteem of other neurodivergent people and the relatives of neurodivergent people and the friends, cousins, aunts, and uncles of neurodivergents. And it does make me sad because the system is what the problem is, guys and girls. It treats ability as fixed. You can work, therefore you should always be able to work. That's not a realistic logic. It doesn't reflect reality, guys. You know, trying, okay, isn't the same as coping. You start questioning yourself. You start comparing yourself to others. You start thinking, am I the problem? And when the system doesn't recognize your experience, that doubt continues to increase. And I've also struggled, in ways that affect confidence, stability, and mental health. Yeah, and I've tried to build a career over time. I've gone into roles with genuine intention. So when figures like Tony Blair push for tighter access to support, it doesn't feel like policy. To me, and I don't know how everyone else feels about this, I'm basically being told I should be able to handle this. Now, this was the kind of thing I was told when I was at school. He's capable, he can do it, but he doesn't try. He never listens properly. You can never sustain his attention. The system is already difficult enough, and there's a narrative that benefits are too easy to access. That hasn't been my experience, not at all. The first time I applied for personal independence payment, I was rejected because their argument was I can articulate. Do they know the hours of masking and rehearsing and mental strain that took to prepare myself for that assessment? The amount of times I went through my own written dialogue of how I would pronounce things, how I would word things. Do they not realize how mentally exhausting that is for a neurodivergent person? The system is not only bureaucratic, it is stressful, it is difficult to navigate, and built around repeatedly proving your struggle. We shouldn't have to prove it. You have a diagnosis. If the DWP continue to go, we don't base it on the claimant's condition. We know it doesn't go away. We base it on the claimant's ability to cope with it. If I wasn't coming to you, I would be coping, wouldn't I? If I felt able to work and sustain a long-term career and stability, I wouldn't be coming to you. I wouldn't be seeking support. And for someone with ADHD, autism, and anxiety, that process alone can be very overwhelming. You have the forms, the appointments, the assessments, the all of the elements requiring organization, which are very difficult for a person with ADHD. So Restricting access further doesn't fix the system. And this seems to be the idea that Tony Blair has at the moment, that we need to heighten the ways in which disabled and neurodivergent people are assessed. Or is it the government's way of trying to save money? Who do we target next? Oh, we'll target people in wheelchairs, we'll target the blind, we'll target the deaf, we'll target the mentally infirmed. Who should we target next? Oh, okay, let's target neurodivergent people because they're a complete waste on the taxpayers' money, aren't they? Now, I'm not going to argue that Tony Blair has influence, but he doesn't have lived experience of ADHD or anxiety. And that matters to me because without that perspective, it becomes easy to reduce real, complex lives into judgments. Who looks like they're struggling? Who seems capable enough? Who fits the system? We already know that neurodivergent people struggle to fit into this system because the system is broken, folks. It is broken. You can argue all you want, but it is completely broken. Neurodivergence doesn't perform neatly. It fluctuates all the time. It adapts and it resists to being boxed in, which is why we can never settle in employment. Now, to me, this is what support actually looks like, and it might shock Tony Blair, but I'm sure he can take it. Support isn't about avoiding responsibility. It's about recognizing difference. For me, support means stability when things aren't working, space to recover without everything collapsing, the chance to find environments where I can function and contribute. Because I do want to contribute. Despite my difficulties, despite the barriers to my own learning and development, I want to contribute. I want to be heard. I want to have a voice. I want to be able to achieve the things that neurotypical people can achieve. But it's a long, long road. But forcing people, particularly neurodivergent people, into systems that don't fit them is not support. Shock horror. It's pressure without the understanding. And that doesn't lead to success, folks. It leads to burnout. And this was why I was terminated from my last job because I was burnt out. I was not coping. It was too much. Full time work, even part time work, is too much for me because I see it as a threat to my psychological and neurological safety. It will lead to burnout. And that leads to moments of self degradation, hyperventilation, crying, screaming, punching walls, screaming incessantly like a caged animal because you don't see a way out of this situation because your body's just gone into overdrive. It's scary. And it's scary for the people that love you as well, you know? But it's important, right, that Tony Blair realizes that you shouldn't have to prove your struggle is real as well because it is real. And no one, no matter how powerful Mr. Blair, gets to define us. And that's the important thing here, folks. Okay. Now, I'm sorry if that was intense, but it's really angered me. And I have brought it to this article to the attention of Pete Warby as well, who you will know is a very well known ADHD advocate. And also Alex Partridge. I've also brought it to the attention of Mind, the National Autistic Society, ADHD UK, and Autism West Midlands. Because if this is going to happen, then we need to act. We need to act, folks. We can't allow this. We can't go backwards. Because otherwise, neurotypical people are going to be expected to fend for themselves. And we can't do that. Not without the support, not without a reason or a purpose to carry on. And this brings me on to another point. This morning I was scrolling through my Facebook and I came across a clip. I think it was a parliament meeting, um, and unfortunately I can't remember the person's name, but he's an MP for a certain area of the UK, and he received a letter from the parent of a SEND child who had apparently had his tribunal rejected, or the date was changed about 2 or 3 times, and it was causing a great deal of challenges, not only for the father of the SEND child, but also the father himself. So he wrote a letter to this MP explaining what was happening, and the MP read it out in his parliament meeting, um, and everyone was completely and utterly shocked. The fact that EHCPs and SEND referrals just keep being shoved onto the back burner, and the fact that both this parent and SEND child had contemplated suicide because they didn't see a way out of this, because the government just weren't seen to be prepared to support them. Absolutely shocking, you know. And this is what you have to do, folks. You've got to fight for your corner. And I've come across comments and articles on social media lately where people have gone, well, I've got autism, I've got ADHD, but with everything going on with the benefit system at the moment, I don't think I'm going to apply. You cannot have that mindset. You've got to fight for your corner. You've got to fight to be heard. Because the less neurodivergent voices that are out there, the less support we are going to get. And that's what keeps us going, folks. I'm just part of many neurodivergent people. You can be the next one. So spread the word. You know, neurodivergent people are people too, but just a different way of thinking. Now, what you have to remember, our difference is not the problem. We are just misunderstood. Okay? Now, in series 2 of my podcast, we're going to take a little shift. Okay? I've decided that I want to hear from real people. Okay? You've had the whole of this season to hear from me. Okay? You'll continue to hear from me, but I think it would be fair if I brought real people, neurodivergent people, or even parents of neurodivergent people who can share their real experiences and their stories with me. And I'm sure that's something that you would like to listen to on my podcast. Okay? Because it's powerful, folks. And it'll show that I'm not the only neurodivergent voice here. Okay? So this is where we're going to take the shift. So hopefully within the next few weeks, I'm going to aim to get some guests onto the podcast. And they will definitely have stories of their own to tell. Okay? So, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. I'm Dan, the Neuro Man May. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, your difference was never the problem. It just wasn't understood. This is Neuro Man, signing out.